So I want to start this with something that I learned from Herb Simon, who is both a great economist and as well as one of the pioneers of artificial intelligence automation. And for many years, I taught this in my courses, which was that the idea that you'd be afraid of automation. The boogeyman of automation consumes worrying capacities that should be saved for real problems, which are problems of scarcity, not of intolerable abundance. And here's a wonderful little model that just shows under a reasonably effective competitive system, the benefits of technology come to workers and consumers, and you need some competition and dot, dot. And I always thought that's correct. But the economy today is incredibly different from what the economy was like when he wrote his analysis. This is in 1966, which was the last time we had headlines about, it wasn't robots, but it was machines taking people's jobs. We have falling share of labor income, we have rising inequality, and we have some striking things with AI that are challenging us at what we thought was our comparative advantage over machines thinking. So, first question I want to ask is this AI robot technology different from previous automation technologies, big machines, the tractor, which replaced the horse, and so on and so forth. And there's two groups of people in dealing with this question. I call the first group Futurists, and those tend to be engineers, computer science experts, who have been extremely struck by the advances in artificial intelligence in their fields that they never expected to occur. And they really tell us that the technology will disrupt job markets. And I'll give you the estimates in a minute, show you the chart. They expect the machines to dominate us in most jobs by 2050, and to complete automation 2020. Those are numbers with wide bands of uncertainty, but you'll see in a minute where those numbers come from. Then there are many of my friends in labor economics. I call them traditionalists, and they just think this is utter nonsense. It gets a lot of headlines, but it can't possibly be true, because after all, we have relatively modest growth of productivity. The Korean productivity is not growing as fast as it was. The American productivity is not growing that fast. Chinese productivity is growing more slowly. So what on earth are you talking about? And then certainly the US and Korea have pretty good employment rates. We're not in a great recession, loss of jobs. So my thought about this is first that economic theory in the form of comparative advantage does not tell us that there's going to be great shortages of jobs. As long as you and I have skills that differ from that of the artificial intelligence, robot, computer, we'll get the jobs that we're better at relatively to the machine, or phrased differently, that it's cheaper for the company to hire us to do than it is to buy a machine. So I think the focus should be not so much on jobs loss, although that's the headlines of all these newspaper things, but on what are the effects on the distribution of income. Are we going to be getting lower paying jobs and the machines get higher paying jobs. It's not fully clear what that is. When I take the two sets of evidence, and I'm going to give you some of the futurist type evidence, and the traditionalist evidence, every labor economist knows the traditional evidence. It's there in the aggregate economic statistics, and it's very clearly, there it is. The futurist stuff is now not the headlines, but it's the actual technologies, the actual machines that are coming out. I'm more impressed in the end by what the computer science and AI people are saying than I am by what the past tells us about productivity and employment. Why? Why do I think the futurists have a better grasp of what's likely to happen? Robots can outthink us. And you presumably all remember when AlphaGo defeated Lee Sedol at Go. As a Go player, I was stunned. The early Go computer games were horrid. I could even beat them. And I couldn't sure beat any, if there's any Koreans here who play Go, you could beat me, I'm positive of that. And we also had the Watson, the IBM machine beating the human Jeopardy. We've now had Carnegie Mellon and the University of Alberta both have machines that can beat humans at poker, where it's incomplete information, et cetera. And then, to me, the thing that blew me away, in 2017, in December, the Google team, it's the DeepMind, it's actually a startup that they bought in London, but Google now owns it, had AlphaZero. And you read that and you just go, oh my God. This machine did not know the rules. They give it the rules, it learns largely by playing against itself over and over again, evolving strategies. In 24 hours, it could beat any human being on Earth because it beat the chess game that beat Kasparov. It beat whoever the best game in shogi. It beat the Go, the AlphaGo that had beaten the Korean champion. And AlphaGo also beat the Chinese champion. So that was, to me, I said, oh my God, that is unbelievable. If I can train a artificial intelligence machine over a weekend. And then some of my friends reminded me that AI algorithms and robots, they basically are highly specialized. They tend to do one thing. You might have said, even this AlphaZero, basically it beat people in board games. They didn't see whether it could beat somebody in poker. I don't know if it could or couldn't. That may have been a different set of learning algorithms. And then we have a comparative advantage in human versatility. And then I thought about finance, where everything's about portfolios. And then, so you see my answer over here. I got a portfolio of artificial intelligence machines. So just give me anything you want to do as a human, and I've got a machine in my portfolio. And the growth of these machines that can beat humans in different activities is advancing so rapidly. We'll be putting out probably next year an index and a data set that has all these machines and all of the robots that are doing things. For the moment, I'll just show you some. There's a robot noodle chef. Amazon has this Kiva robot that does getting the things from the books. There's a robot boss, so that's gonna, and pizza delivery robot, soccer robot, space robot. There's IBM Watson, a delivery dog. The Boston delivery dog is now just been trained to open doors for you. So you can have a dog that, humanoid robots and sex robots, which I think mostly come from Japan. So there they are. I've been collecting over the last, let's say, 5 years, every article I can get in the newspapers. So I have a huge little database. It's just thing after thing after thing. So that's a portfolio. Then there was a survey done by a set of AI people who, here it says, published at 2015 NIPS, ICML, and something else, ICML, 2 conferences. These are the 2 leading conferences, I'm told, in artificial intelligence. And they surveyed 352 experts. I give you the exact reference. Came out on May 30th, 2017. And the question they asked the AI experts was, when will AI outperform humans at work? And so there's a list of things. The first one they said was going to go is folding laundry. I was very surprised because folding laundry obviously requires that you can recognize socks from shirts, that it takes some, it's not a simple, let's say a welding robot in an automobile factory. This got to have more versatility and flexibility. They said within, 3 years or 4 years, there will be a folding laundry machine on the market, supposedly from a California startup, for about $1,000 that will fold your laundry. You could have it next to your washing machine and dryer by the end of next year. Poof. Truck driver. Well, we've all seen the discussions of driverless cars, and there was just a new development in mathematics that I read about this morning, which says they will vastly improve the artificial intelligence for driving trucks, having to do with some theorem that goes back, this sum of squares theorem that goes back to Hilbert. Poof. You just go down the list, and there they are. Of course, the one occupation that is really will be the last one to go, say the AI researchers, is AI researchers. You'll notice that's the last one here. And then full automation of labor. So the lines there are showing you the uncertainty around this, and obviously the further out it goes, et cetera. Okay, these are jobs that the people who are building the machines and the programs are telling you will go. I come to the bottom line of this is that at one point, these AI robots will earn the money that workers earn today in many areas, and then whoever owns these robots is going to be collecting everybody's paycheck. And so I said, well, who owns the robots rules the world. The robots are doing the work, they're making the money, and the guys who own the robots are collecting the money. That's not a very pleasant thought unless you are one of these, or if you look at them, I wouldn't want to be one of these upper 0.01% either. You got to be, well, money's growing out of his head. So that's the problem. So how are we going to respond to this massive continual flow of machines coming out that does work that we could do? Well, first thing any person would say is human capital. And then it's not the human capital that would be with an ancient Korean scholar who I have over there. It's got to be computer stuff. It's data science, machine learning. Every worker should be AI literate. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics tells us that the huge growth in the U.S. in the past and the growth in the future will be in computer occupations. That's where you want to look at. That's the number one thing here among STEM occupations, but it's the number one in everything. So you'd say to any student, you want to learn, you want to take some artificial intelligence courses, etc. Computer science, though, is an interesting situation. In the US, it has followed these cobweb patterns. There's a big burst of students who go into it. So I've got the bachelor's degrees over there on the graph, and it goes way up, and then we overproduce. There's a crash, and then it goes up again, and then it went through a crash, and then this graph, I finished it in 2011 or 12, 2010. So I looked at where it is now. In the last 5 years, there's been a 50% increase, so it has now surpassed the previous peak. So I looked at some Korean computer science bachelor's degrees data. Doesn't show anything like this huge jumpiness. The American market may be the most student-run by whatever students are interested in. The universities give it to them, and it goes up and it goes down, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd raise that to you. Someone here could tell me, how come the Korean Bachelor of Sciences in Computer Science hasn't increased the way the American has? The computer science in the US, you take STEM workers, science, technology, engineering, and math, and the big blue line is computer. A typical scientific worker, or it's almost half, like scientific workers in the US are computer scientists. They are all over the place. So and they also pull in many students who didn't major in computer science. So the figures at the bottom there just to tell you that. This is clearly the US moving into, in the last session there was some discussion of programs versus physical capital. This is US people doing the program, writing the programs. There's two interesting things in the actual work. How much time? 5, okay, I'll go faster. There's a lot of discussion now in the robot area of humans and robots working as teams, and these are some estimates of the growth, so that wherever we work we're going to do, there's going to be some robotic element to it. And you saw Elon Musk had to put humans back into his factory when the machines weren't quite as good. The other area where we will see something happening is in human enhancement technology. How do I compete with a robot? Well, just stick some chip in my brain that connects me to some great cloud computer, and then I can compete with your robot. Well, there are chips being put in. They're putting in things for vision. Samsung has an invention. I picked out inventions from Korean companies. Exoskeleton. Well, you're now surrounded by extra stuff to lift things. Brain-computer interfaces. ... That means us becoming more like the robots or the machines. And that, I call that here evolution to cyborg. There was a joke in the US from radio in the 1940s where your money or your life, they asked. Jack Benny was a comedian who was famous for being stingy, and he's hesitating. And so I was giving a talk to some union people in the US, and somebody asked me, they weren't a mugger, it was a union person, said, would you rather be human or a robot? And I hesitated. And I've now been asking students this question, and they also hesitate. You start thinking, do you want to be a human in a world where the robots are smarter, faster, blah, blah, than you? Thinking it over. I leave that to you. There is a Korean movie about being a cyborg that I have over there. Okay, so I'm almost done. So so that's the responses of individuals. You thinking, what should I do? how do I get chips put in me? Society, I think, has two choices in the kinds of policies. It can have what I call them before policies and after policies. Before policies tries to establish a level playing field for everybody in the economy, and I think the only way we can deal with the new technology is by increasing citizens' ownership or control of the business capital and the rights of work. After policies are traditional welfare state policies where you tax somebody afterwards and take the government money and give it in some fashion to poorer people. I'm going to deal with the first. And I want to make a case, two cases. One, for people to own their own, have some ownership stake in their own firm. And so the natural solution, if the robots are going to be AI, robots going to have the work and own the income, and get the income, you want to own the machine. You want to have some stake in that. And this is a little Marxian, it may sound, but in the AI robotics economy, workers own the means of production, and they gain income from the machines. And there's evidence that employee ownership really is a positive force. Many companies are happy to have incentive programs, profit sharing, ... In the US, we are more advanced than any other country in this form of capitalism. And I think we could spread it even more quickly if we had a government that was more positive about this. And had Trump's tax cut to the big corporations instead been a tax cut to companies that share things with the workers, give shares or put in profit sharing schemes, you would see a very different US than just the cuts to the rich. But if you do the calculations, you quickly see workers, even who own a substantial part of their own company, that's risky because the company can do badly. And you've got to have some diversification. People outside the private for-profit sector would have nothing. And so I concluded ownership must go beyond your own firm to stakes in business more broadly. And here there's three paths for giving workers a stake and building your welfare system on before rather than after policies. Pension funds are in the US very big, private pension funds. They own 36% of the listed firms on the listed capital in the stock market. Bush tried to and failed to privatize the system. Sweden actually has a system where they put a special surcharge on your income that goes into a private pension fund that you have. But it can only be used for pensions. Individual ownership of capital, people buying mutual funds, has declined drastically in the US because everybody wants to put their money through a pension fund, which is the tax privileged way. So I don't see that as viable without a change in tax laws. And then the one that I want to stress are sovereign wealth funds. These are funds set up by governments. In the US, they're set up by state governments that own assets in companies or other income-earning situations, and which have been growing greatly around the world in the last few years. However, these funds do not show up in citizens' incomes except for one. So the largest one I said is Norway. There's some question that Japan may have a bigger one now. Korea has a sovereign wealth fund, which is listed as 16th by value. The one that I want to put stress on is the US Alaska Permanent Fund, which pays residents annual dividends. And that's every person in the state, regardless whether they work or do not work, regardless if they were just newly born or some retiree, they get $1,000 to $2,000 depending on the situation, on how the fund is doing. If you get $2,000 a year for every person, a family of 4 gets $8,000. It is not paid as, quote, welfare, it's paid as ownership, that you, the citizen, own this fund. The UK had a fund, which Gordon Brown wanted to do, to give a bond at birth. Didn't really, the Tories undid it. In 2018, a British foundation suggested setting up a fund that would give lump sum payments to young people who have no inheritance. So that a young person from a poor family would have some capital to start their lives off, which fits in the same thing. The question is, where do you raise the tax money to start this fund off? And I think it has to be on something intangible capital that comes from public research and development that companies use. I'm now almost done. And just the question of, should we worry about this now, or is this some sort of very far, too much in the future? Well, that's a famous American philosopher who says he's not going to worry about work. After all, he has funner things to do. It's the baby's problem. And Google Alpha 20 is going to be around when this baby reaches the job market. Do you think an employer is going to run and hire this young person? Or remember, the Google Alpha can beat the best Korean and Chinese champions in Go, and the new machine on a weekend can learn how to do stuff. I worry about, every time I see a little kid, I worry. I said, I didn't have to compete with an artificial intelligence connected to some quantum computer in the sky. And then you can wonder, which I won't wonder seriously, about, gee, what is the kid supposed to do? Party, virtue. My son would choose playing virtual reality games all the time, but that's it. And then I have a little poem here. I just think we have to act sooner rather than later, because the later we act, the less helpful humans will be to the machines. Right now, the cobots, it's the robots and the humans working together seems to be the most productive way to operate. And second, if the inequality gets much bigger, the few people who own the machines are going to be less willing. They will fight harder not to have any ownership be shared. So I think sooner. That's the end.
박수 좀 부탁드립니다.